She seemed like just another alien worker, until the hoodie came off. Asterisk, the spaceport of Arrivas 9 was always loud. Always busy, always full of life. Cargo ships came and went, like waves on an endless ocean. The air was thick with the smell of burning fuel and alien spices from the market stalls. Somewhere in the crowd, metal clanged as loaders moved crates from one freighter to another. Captain Ryan stepped down from his ship's ramp and into the chaos. He had been to Arrivas 9 many times, but the sight still amazed him. So many species in one place, tall insectoids clicking in their own language, reptilian traders shouting about their goods, and small furry mechanics darting under machines to make quick repairs. Ryan adjusted the strap of his cargo scanner. His job was simple: inspect goods, sign off shipments, and make sure no one was smuggling anything dangerous. But something about today felt different. He couldn't explain why. As he walked along the dock, he noticed the workers unloading a large shipment of industrial supplies. Among them was one figure who didn't fit in with the rest. She was small compared to the others, wearing a plain gray uniform and a dark hoodie pulled low over her face. The hood hid her features completely. Ryan slowed down without meaning to. Something about her caught his attention. She moved quietly, never speaking to anyone. While the other workers shouted instructions and passed tools back and forth, she kept to herself. Her steps were light, almost silent, and her movements were smooth. Too smooth for someone doing heavy manual labor all day. Ryan frowned. There was also a faint sound, a soft ticking. Every time she shifted her weight, tick, tick, tick. No one else seemed to notice. A large insectoid foreman shouted orders, and the hooded worker lifted a crate that looked far too heavy for someone her size. She carried it without any sign of strain, her head still low, and placed it neatly on a gravcart. Ryan scanned the rest of the crew. Most were the usual dock workers he saw in ports like this, rough, tired, and covered in dust from long shifts. But this one, she was different. Her clothes were too clean. Her boots looked sturdy and new. Even the way she kept her sleeves pulled down seemed deliberate, as if she didn't want anyone to see her arms. The captain's instincts told him there was a story here. As he passed closer, he tried to get a better look under the hood, but the shadow hid everything. All he saw was the edge of a metal tag, half tucked under her sleeve. The letters were too small to read, but the metal glinted like polished steel. He almost asked her name. But before he could speak, another crew shouted for him to move aside. A gravloader zipped past, carrying sealed containers marked biohazard. Ryan stepped back. When he looked for the hooded worker again, she had moved to the far side of the dock, away from him. Still alone, still quiet. The ticking sound followed her. Tick, tick, tick. An uneasy feeling settled in his chest. He had seen thousands of dock workers over the years, but none quite like this one. Most workers had tired eyes and slouched shoulders. This one stood straight, alert, like a soldier on guard. He told himself it was nothing, just another day, another shipment, but his eyes kept going back to her. At one point, a crate slipped from a loader's grip. The hooded worker was closest. She caught the crate before it hit the ground, moving faster than Ryan thought possible. Then she set it back without a word and walked away as if nothing had happened. The foreman shouted something in her direction, but she didn't answer. She just kept working. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. He didn't know what she was hiding, but he was sure of one thing: she wasn't what she seemed. And in a place like Arrivas 9, that usually meant trouble. Asterisk, the next morning, the dock was busy again. Cargo ships had arrived during the night, and the air smelled of engine oil and ozone. Ryan came back early, scanning the shipping logs on his datapad. He told himself he was only here to check the new cargo, but in truth, part of him wanted to see her again, the hooded worker. And there she was. Same gray uniform, same dark hood. Head down as she lifted crates from a freighter's loading bay. Ryan noticed something else this time. While the other workers joked, argued, or complained, she never spoke a single word, not even to answer the foreman's instructions. She only gave small nods, her hands already moving to the next task before the order was finished. She carried heavy crates, her steps balanced and even. When she placed a crate down, it landed without a single wobble. Every move was precise, almost too precise, like she had practiced each motion 100 times before. The strange ticking sound was still there, faint but steady. Tick, tick. Some workers glanced at her, then quickly looked away. Ryan caught a faint trace of nervousness in their faces. They didn't seem to like being near her. A big reptilian loader avoided walking past her, even though it would have been the fastest route. Instead, he made a long loop around the dock. Ryan's curiosity grew. People didn't avoid others for no reason. Not in a place like Orivas 9, where everyone was just trying to get paid. To smaller alien workers, both with thin blue skin and long arms, whispered to each other while looking at the hooded figure. Ryan couldn't hear their words over the noise of the dock, but he saw one of them make a slicing motion across his throat. Ryan frowned. That was no friendly gossip. The foreman shouted again, and the hooded worker moved toward a towering stack of cargo. She began climbing the side like it was nothing, balancing on narrow beams without hesitation. Her boots gripped the metal surface perfectly. She reached the top, hooked a graveling to a crate, and climbed down just as quickly, landing lightly on the floor. Not once did she speak. Ryan checked his datapad and pretended to review shipment codes, but his attention never left her. The more he watched, the more his instincts told him she was dangerous. Not dangerous like a common criminal, but dangerous like a trained operative. Someone who could break a man's neck before he even knew she was there. A loud crash broke his thoughts. Across the dock, a large insectoid worker had dropped a crate of metallic rods, scattering them across the floor. The hooded worker was closest again. Without a word, she stepped in, picked up the rods one by one, and stacked them neatly. The insectoid muttered something in its own language, its voice tense. Ryan didn't understand the words, but the tone was sharp, almost a warning. The hooded worker didn't reply. She didn't even look at him. She just finished stacking the rods, then walked away. Ryan followed her with his eyes as she returned to her corner of the dock. It was almost like she was keeping herself separated from everyone else, on purpose. He was about to approach her when the moment was interrupted. 3 rough-looking alien dockhands walked in from the east gate, big, broad-shouldered, and moving, like they owned the place. They spotted the hooded worker immediately. Ryan saw the smirk on the leader's face. Trouble. The trio moved toward her, blocking her path. The leader said something, leaning in close. She didn't answer. She didn't even look up. The second one laughed and made a mocking bow, as if he were teasing her. The third stepped behind her, cutting off her escape. Ryan tensed, ready to step in. But then, before anyone could blink, she moved. It wasn't violent. Not yet. But she shifted sideways with perfect timing, letting the leader's hand pass harmlessly through the air where her shoulder had been a second ago. The movement was smooth, controlled, almost elegant. The leader looked confused. He reached again. Same result. She was already gone, moving around him without touching him. For a moment, Ryan thought she might simply walk away. But then the foreman appeared, shouting in a language Ryan didn't know. Whatever he said made the 3 back off quickly, muttering curses as they left. The hooded worker didn't thank the foreman. She didn't react at all. She just went back to work, as if nothing had happened. Ryan, on the other hand, felt his curiosity turning into something else. Suspicion. This was no ordinary worker. Something told him that, sooner or later, he was going to find out exactly who she was. And when that happened, it might be too late to turn back. By the 3rd day, Ryan had stopped pretending. He was not here for cargo checks anymore. He was here for her. The hooded worker had become an unsolved puzzle in his mind. Every movement, every silent nod, every strange tick-tick-tick of hidden machinery only made his curiosity grow. That morning, the dock felt different. The air was tense. Ship horns echoed from the upper bays, and somewhere far off, a siren wailed. Workers moved faster than usual, trying to finish unloading before the next security sweep. Ryan spotted her near the far loading ramp, pulling a gravcart behind her. She was heading toward a shipment of sealed metal containers, the kind that needed special clearance. That alone was strange. Most low-rank workers weren't allowed near those crates. But before Ryan could get closer, trouble arrived. A gang of 4 alien dockhands came through the side entrance. They were not part of the regular crew. He had never seen them before. Tall, broad-shouldered, with skin like cracked stone. They moved with slow confidence, as if they owned the place. They noticed the hooded worker instantly. One of them tilted his head toward her and grinned a slow, sharp smile that promised nothing good. Ryan's gut tightened. The gang approached, forming a loose circle around her. The tallest, clearly the leader, stepped forward and spoke in a gravelly voice. Ryan was too far away to catch the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Mocking, taunting. She didn't answer. She didn't even stop moving. She kept pulling the gravcart head low. The leader reached out a massive hand to grab her shoulder. That was when she moved. It wasn't a big movement, just a small sidestep, but it was perfectly timed. The leader's hand closed on empty air. He frowned, tried again, and again she was gone, sliding out of reach like she had rehearsed it. The gang laughed, but the laughter wasn't friendly. One of them stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Another moved behind her. Now she was boxed in. Ryan could see the shift in her stance. She wasn't hunched anymore. Her feet were planted, weight balanced, her head tilted slightly, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. Tick, tick. The leader leaned in, speaking again. His voice was quieter now, dangerous. Then it happened. Her right hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Her left hand tapped something on his forearm. Not a strike, but a precise touch. The leader froze, eyes wide, as if she had just pressed a hidden nerve. She let go, and he stumbled back, clutching his arm. No one laughed this time. The second dockhand lunged at her. She stepped aside, hooked his ankle with her boot, and sent him crashing to the ground. The third hesitated, looking at the others, and the fourth took a step back. Ryan moved forward quickly, pretending he had business in that section. He didn't want this to turn into a full fight, not with port security nearby. The foreman appeared again, shouting orders. His voice was sharp, commanding. Ryan didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Leave her alone. The gang backed off, muttering curses. The leader shot her one last look, a glare full of hate, and, Ryan thought, maybe fear. Then they were gone. The hooded worker stood still for a moment. Then she turned, picked up the gravcart handle, and went back to work without a word. Ryan couldn't take it anymore. He followed her to the cargo bay. You handled that well, he said casually. No answer. I've worked in ports for years. He tried again, and I've never seen a dockhand move like that. She kept walking. Ryan caught up, stepping in front of her. What's your name? For the first time, she looked at him. Her hood still shadowed most of her face, but he saw the eyes, sharp, calculating, scanning him as if measuring every possible threat. You asked too many questions, she said softly. Her voice was calm, but it carried an edge, like a blade hidden in silk. Then she walked past him, disappearing into the crowd of workers. Ryan stood there, heart beating faster than he expected. She had spoken. Just one line, but it told him everything. He needed to know she was no ordinary worker, and whatever she was hiding was dangerous. And for some reason, he couldn't walk away. The fourth day began, like any other at Orivis 9 ships docked. Cranes groaned under heavy loads, and the air was filled with the usual mix of shouts, engine hum, and the smell of burned fuel. Ryan was on the upper walkway, checking shipment logs, when a loud metallic clang echoed across the dock. It wasn't the normal sound of cargo being set down. It was sharper, heavier, wrong. Below, a gravloader had stopped suddenly, its magnetic clamps flickering red. One of the sealed cargo crates was hanging in midair, swaying dangerously. Workers shouted warnings, but before anyone could fix it, the clamps failed. The crate dropped. It hit the metal deck with a deep thud. The locks cracked open, and the heavy lid slid halfway off. Ryan leaned over the railing to get a better look, and froze. Inside were weapons. Not standard rifles or pistols, but sleek, black, military-grade blasters. Each one was fitted with attachments that Ryan recognized from classified reports. These weren't for self-defense or sport. These were for war. The noise drew attention fast. Workers backed away. Some whispered in panic. Others turned and walked off quickly, pretending they hadn't seen anything. In a place like seeing the wrong thing could get you killed. But one person didn't walk away. The hooded worker was already moving toward the crate. Ryan expected her to look shocked like everyone else. But she didn't. Her steps were quick, steady, with no hesitation. She reached the crate, looked inside for only a second, and then turned to the nearest workers. Move those containers to Bay 4, she ordered. Her voice was low but firm, like she had been giving orders all her life. The workers froze for a moment, confused. She didn't raise her voice, but something in her tone made them obey without question. Two of them rushed to obey, hauling nearby crates to block the open container from view. Ryan came down from the walkway, weaving through the crowd. He couldn't hear everything she was saying, but it was clear she was organizing the scene. She sent one worker to fetch a graph cover. Another she ordered to push the broken loader away from the area. The dock foreman appeared, his antennae twitching nervously. She leaned in close to him, speaking quickly. His eyes widened, and he nodded once before hurrying off. Ryan stepped closer, catching her last words to the foreman. They'll be here soon. We have minutes. Ryan thought, and then he heard it, a distant wail. Not the work sirens used to signal a break. This was different. Sharper. Port Authority. They were coming. Ryan didn't know what a game was, but he knew one thing. If the Port Authority found those weapons, the whole dock would be locked down, and every worker here would be interrogated. Maybe worse. She moved to the crate and, with surprising strength, pulled the heavy lid back into place. Then she threw the grav cover over it, activating the camouflage setting. To anyone passing by, it now looked like a container of ordinary industrial parts. "Help me," she said suddenly. Ryan blinked. "What? Help me move this now?" He hesitated, glancing toward the sound of the approaching patrol craft. "Why should I? Because if you don't, you'll be explaining to them why you were standing over a crate of black market weapons." She didn't wait for his answer. She grabbed one end of the grab sled and started pulling. Against his better judgment, Ryan took the other end. Together they wheeled it toward a stack of containers marked agricultural supplies. The patrol ship's engines were loud now, rumbling through the metal deck. "Faster," she said. They slid the crate into a narrow space between two massive storage units. It fit perfectly, hidden from casual view. By the time the Port Authority patrol landed, the hooded worker had gone back to moving ordinary crates like nothing had happened. Ryan stood off to the side, trying to look busy. The patrol officers swept through the area, scanning shipments. One of them glanced at Ryan, but moved on without stopping. They spent several minutes questioning the foreman, then left without finding anything unusual. Ryan exhaled slowly. When he turned to look for her, she was gone. He finally spotted her at the far end of the dock, pulling another grav cart from a distance. She looked like just another worker again. Small, quiet, unimportant. But Ryan knew better now. She hadn't just saved herself. She had saved the entire dock from a lockdown. And she had done it without fear, without hesitation, and without caring that she had just handled enough illegal firepower to start a small war. Ryan's questions were piling up faster than he could find answers. Who was she? Why was she here? And how did she know exactly what to do before the Port Authority even arrived? He didn't know yet, but one thing was certain. This was no random dockhand in a boat. She was playing a game far bigger than anyone else here realized, and Ryan had just stepped into it. The next day, Ryan arrived early, not to check cargo, not to meet with the foreman, but because he wanted answers. The memory of yesterday's incident burned in his mind, the crate of illegal weapons, the way she had taken control like a commander, the precision in her movements. She was no ordinary dock, and Ryan intended to find out who she really was. The dock was quieter in the early hours. A thin mist clung to the air, drifting from the coolant vents along the loading bay. A handful of workers were already moving crates, their boots clanging. On the metal deck, Ryan scanned the area until he spotted her. Same gray uniform, same dark hood, same silent movements. She was working near the upper stacks today, lifting small cargo units into place on a high shelf. She climbed the scaffolding with ease, as if gravity had less hold on her than anyone else. Ryan kept his distance at first, pretending to check shipping manifests. He watched her balance on a narrow beam, a heavy crate in her arms, without the slightest wobble. That was when it happened. The crate slipped slightly in her grip, not enough to drop, but enough for her to shift suddenly. The motion caught the edge of her hood and pushed it back. Just for a second, Ryan's breath caught. He had expected alien features, maybe ridged skin, or scales, or the insectoid eyes common among dock workers here. But what he saw was human, not just human striking. Her eyes were sharp and alert, the kind that seemed to see everything. A faint scar ran across her left cheek, and a thin silver implant trailed from behind her ear, down into the collar of her uniform. The light caught the metal, and Ryan caught the faintest glint of moving parts under the skin. Then the hood was back in place. She didn't even glance in his direction, as if nothing had happened. Ryan's heart beat faster. Human. A human on a dock where humans were rare, especially in jobs like this. And that implant, he had seen tech like that before. It wasn't common, and it wasn't cheap. Military-grade neural interface, used for combat coordination, targeting, and command. She finished her work on the upper stack and climbed down with the same quiet precision. Ryan stepped forward, pretending to be casual. "Careful up there," he said. "Wouldn't want you to fall." She didn't answer. "I didn't. No humans worked in this dock." He tried again. Her head turned slightly in his direction, but her face stayed in shadow. "I'm just here to work," she said. Ryan studied her. Sure, and I'm just here to drink the coffee. She moved past him, heading toward the next set of crates. The ticking sound followed her. Tick, tick, tick. Yesterday, Ryan said, walking alongside her. You hid that weapons crate before Port Authority could find it. You knew they were coming. How? No idea what you're talking about. I think you do, Ryan said quietly. And I think you're a lot more than a cargo lifter. She stopped, just for a moment, then turned her head enough that he could see one eye under the hood. You think too much, she said, and walked away. Ryan let her go. Pressing her now would get him nowhere. But he had seen enough to know too. Things first, she was hiding something huge. Second, she was definitely human. The rest of the shift passed slowly. Ryan tried to focus on his work, but every so often he caught himself glancing her way. She never once slipped again. Every movement was guarded, controlled, as if that brief reveal had reminded her to be careful by the end of the day. Ryan had decided on one thing. He was going to find out her name, even if it took every favor he was owed in this port. Because, whoever she wasn't just surviving here. She was playing a role. And roles like that always had a bigger story behind them. The sixth day on Orivis 9 began with trouble in the air. Ryan could feel it before he even stepped onto the dock. The workers moved differently, quicker, glancing over their shoulders more often. The usual noise of clanging crates and shouting orders was there, but it carried a sharper edge. Like, everyone was waiting for something to happen. Ryan spotted her immediately. The hooded worker. Same quiet presence. Same deliberate movements. But today, there was something different about her too. A subtle tension in her shoulders. A readiness in her stance. He wasn't the only one who noticed. A tall, broad alien, in a black and red security uniform, entered from the east gate. His skin was a dull bronze color, and a jagged scar ran down the side of his head. The badge on his chest marked him as a senior Port Authority officer. The officer's gaze swept the dock, scanning the workers one by one. Then his eyes locked on her. Ryan's stomach tightened. The officer walked straight toward her, his heavy boots echoing on the metal deck. Workers nearby quickly moved out of his way. No one wanted to get between a security officer and his target. She kept working, head down, until his shadow fell across her. You there? The officer said, his voice deep and cold. Show me your identification. She didn't answer. The officer repeated, stepping closer. Show me your ID now. Ryan edged closer, pretending to examine a nearby crate. She straightened slowly, her hood still shadowing her face. You don't have clearance for that, she said quietly. A faint murmur ran through the nearby workers. No one talked to Port Authority like that. The officer's eyes narrowed. I'm giving you a direct order. Show me your face and your ID, or I'll remove that hood myself. She didn't move. Walk away. The officer's hand twitched toward the small baton at his belt. Last chance. Ryan's muscles tensed. He knew that if the officer touched her, it wouldn't end quietly. The officer reached out in a blur. Her hand shot up, catching his wrist before he could grab her hood. She stepped in close, her other hand pressing something just under his elbow. The officer froze, his knees buckling slightly from the sudden pressure on a nerve cluster. She leaned in, speaking so quietly that only Ryan could hear. If you value your arm, let go. The officer's jaw clenched. For a moment, Ryan thought he would draw his weapon. But instead, the officer jerked his hand free and took a step back. This isn't over, he growled. She didn't reply. She simply turned away and picked up the crate she had been moving before. The officer lingered for a moment, glaring at her. Then he turned and stalked off, shouting for his patrol to follow. The tension on the dock slowly eased, but the whispers began almost immediately. Workers exchanged quick glances and muttered under their breath. Some looked impressed. Others looked afraid. Ryan moved closer to her as she worked. You just stood down a senior Port Authority officer. That's not something an ordinary dock worker does. She kept moving crates. I told you, I'm just here to work. He shook his head. No, you're here for something else. And sooner or later, you're going to have to trust someone. She paused, her gloved hands resting on the edge of a crate. For a moment, he thought she might answer. Then she spoke, her voice calm but final. Trust is earned, Captain. And you haven't earned mine yet. Before he could reply, voice boomed across the dock, calling for the end of the shift. She walked away without looking back. Ryan watched her disappear into the crowd of workers, leaving for the day. His gut told him the confrontation with the officer wasn't random. Someone had sent him specifically for her. and that meant her time hiding under that hood was running out. The seventh day began under a storm-gray sky. Lightning flickered above the glass dome of Orivis 9, and the low rumble of thunder rolled through the docking bays. The weather system made everything feel heavier, like the air itself was warning that something was about to happen. Ryan felt it in his gut. When he arrived at the dock, the hooded worker was already there. Same gray uniform, same silent movements. But today, she wasn't alone. The senior Port Authority officer from yesterday stood at the far end of the bay, flanked by two heavily armed patrol guards. They were blocking the main exit. Ryan's chest tightened. This wasn't going to be another quiet day. The officer's eyes never left her as he slowly made his way across the deck. Workers stopped what they were doing, the noise of the dock dying down until all that remained was the distant hum of generators and the faint ticking sound that followed her everywhere. When the officer reached her, he didn't waste time. "Remove the hood," he ordered. She didn't look up. "I told you before. You don't have clearance." The officer's lips curled into a cold smile. "I don't need clearance today." He motioned to the guards. "Take it off." Ryan stepped forward. Before they could touch her, "Hold on. Stay out of this, Captain," the officer barked. "This is official business." The guards moved in. One reached for her arm, the other for the hood. She moved faster than anyone in the bay could follow. In 2 smooth steps, she twisted the first guard's wrist, making him drop his weapon, then used his own momentum to send him stumbling into a stack of crates. The second guard swung at her, but she ducked low, sweeping his legs out from under him. The officer reached for his sidearm. Ryan's voice cut through the air. "Don't." But the officer ignored him, pulling the weapon free. That's when she stopped. She turned to face him fully. "Enough," she said. Slowly, deliberately. She reached up with both hands and pulled back the hood. The air in the dock seemed to freeze. Her face was human, pale from years away from natural sunlight, but strong and sharp. The scar along her cheek caught the overhead lights, and the silver implant that ran from behind her ear down. Her neck glowed faintly with a pulsing blue light. Ryan's breath caught. He recognized her now. Everyone in the Alliance would. Commander Ilara Vance, Human Special Forces, missing in action for over 5 years. Officially declared dead after the failed defense of the Vega Rim. Ryan had read the reports. She had led the last stand against an invading fleet, buying time for thousands of civilians to escape. No one had seen her since. The officer froze, weapon still in his hand. His eyes flicked between her face and the implant. Recognition and fear crept over his features. She stepped toward him, her voice steady. "I'm not here as a dock worker. I'm here because this port is being used to smuggle weapons to the front. If you've got any sense, you'll stand down and let me finish my job." No one spoke. The dock was silent, except for the hum of the lights and the faint ticking from her implant. The officer hesitated for a long moment, then holstered his weapon. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I go where I'm needed." She replied. She turned to leave, but Ryan stepped in her path. "All this time," he said, "why hide under a hood?" Her eyes met his. "Because sometimes, the only way to win is to let the enemy think you're invisible." With that, she pulled the hood back up and walked past him, disappearing into the maze of cargo stacks. Ryan stood there, watching her go, knowing he would probably never see her again. But now he understood. She wasn't just working the docks. She was hunting something bigger. And somewhere out there, the war she had once fought hadn't ended.